My name is Edward Dort, previously a resident of Fulton County, Georgia, which includes the city of Atlanta, where I experienced extensive judicial corruption and attorney misconduct. And even to this day, I continue to endure the corruption within the family court systems of Fulton County, Georgia. On June 13, 2008, without warning my ex-wife of 25 years, elected to file a contested divorce against me in the Family Division of Superior Court of Fulton County. I expected my ex-wife to make matters somewhat difficult. Nonetheless, I believed that no matter what happened, the court would be competent, professional, and fair in the application of the relevant laws and court rules, would espouse justice and equity in its treatment of all the parties and their claims. It would make sure that all the participants conduct themselves honestly and ethically. As a taxpayer, a law-abiding citizen, a veteran, and a credible member of the community, one would assume that it would be entitled to nothing less. However, to my horror, this is not remotely what happened. In fact, the travesty of justice I'm about to describe is a violation of the basic tenets of the American jurisprudence so heinous the average person would think the story took place in some lawless dictatorship in a third world nation instead of Georgia, USA. Even more alarming still is the fact that the outrageous abusive behavior I've endured, which continues to this day, occurs in most of the family courts from coast to coast, affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans each year. I call this a gravely sinister but silent epidemic of injustice, which is not gendered-based, but is premised on the orderly, systematic raping and pillaging of the victim's assets and income. I've called this the business of divorce. Okay. Once I accepted that my marriage could not be salvaged, I decided to assert my rights under the state and federal constitutions and proceeded as a self-represented litigant. My first act was to attempt to reach a settlement with my ex-wife, requiring that I go through her attorneys. However, from the beginning, her attorneys, Robert Boyd and Stephen Maltalto, thwarted all meaningful, sensible efforts for the parties to come to a mutual beneficial agreement. I came to understand that in cases where the parties have substantial income and assets, attorneys do not make a living on cases that are settled too quickly. Therefore, they do whatever it takes to make the matter fester, including agitating their clients against each other. After many, many months of aggravation, expense, and needless drama in the pretrial phase of the case, much of which was riddled with numerous examples of judicial inequity and abusive litigation tactics by the opposing counsel, and premised by the fact that I was a self-litigant, the trial was set for August 2009. Gail Tucson was the presiding judge, and after a brutal 3-day trial in which I represented myself, Judge Tucson awarded a final judgment in divorce. As it turned out, the decree was not the final word, but the beginning of a frightening journey during which I was to uncover a magnitude of corruption, degradation, incompetence, and unethical conduct. Regarding Judge Tucson, the most appealing revelation I came upon was that I discovered that just prior to the trial, she not only received campaign contributions from both Robert Boyd and Stephen Maltalto, my ex-wife's opposing attorneys, but Mr. Boyd was a member of her re-election campaign committee. His partner was the chairman of her re-election campaign. In fact, Boyd made a point of showing up the third day of the trial and immediately dived into a very personal conversation with Judge Tucson. This may explain another hugely unethical act committed by the judge regarding the decree, and that she executed the exact version presented to her by my ex-wife's attorneys. In addition to the terms and conditions hugely beneficial to the former ex-wife, particularly with regards to the calculation of child support and alimony, the judge decided to add a fictitious sum of $2,500 per month as imputed income, which had absolutely no basis in fact. Plus, she made a point of awarding Stephen Maltalto $50,000 in attorney fees to be paid to me without any scrutiny whatsoever of this outrageous amount. Another horrendous consequence of Judge Tucson's wholesale acceptance of Maltalto's version of the decree pertains to the valuation of two properties in the marriage. marital home in Atlanta, Georgia, and a vacation home in North Carolina. Despite the mortgage crisis and the ensuing real estate value collapse, which was taking place throughout the country, and especially in Georgia, Judge Tucson violated my constitutional rights and violated real estate law in assessing a value. In fact, the opposing party, my ex-wife's expert witness, clearly stated that his valuation was only good for one day, and that the properties would probably go down 35 to 50% due to the market conditions. Judge Tucson also ordered that unless these properties were sold at the ridiculous prices, at a minimum, I would have to pay 8% interest as a penalty per year. I had the responsibility of said properties. My ex-wife was court ordered to sign a quitclaim deed for the vacation home and sign title over to me. She refused to do any of that. I subsequently followed by filing the appropriate contempts. In appearance in front of Judge Tucson, I was found in willful contempt of not selling the properties, even though my acts would only occur if my ex-wife signed a quitclaim deed. Her response, it was just lawyering. In addition, my ex-wife continued to file numerous contempts, and a lot of these matters were referred in front of a judicial officer, Gregory Alembic. Without getting too detailed on the technicality of the laws, the judicial officers are not supposed to hear any contempts or any matters that are contested if either party files 1000-4, which requires a judge to hear all matters. Judicial Alembic ignored the filings. In fact, the initial filing of that was done by Stephen Maltalto, knowing that this would be a contested matter. I subsequently filed the motion 3 times per the court rules. In spite of that, Judicial Alembic violated 2 basic aspects. He continued to hear the matter, threatening to incarcerate me because a house had not sold. In addition, deprived me of a court reporter when I requested to have one take down the matters in hand. Several times I've been threatened with incarceration in regards to real estate property and the sums to be paid on the real estate property in the worst housing market that we've seen since the Great Depression. I would like to note that Fulton County Court is infamous for throwing litigants in jail for non-violent infractions of divorce decrees, especially for non-payment of support obligations, even if parties are verifiably impoverished. In fact, a class action lawsuit may still be pending, was filed because such horrendous incarcerations are commonplace. There has to be a better way to resolve matters, than throwing average people in jail who are not criminals, especially in this challenging economic environment. In addition, Judge Tucson used a common technique of speaking oral pronouncements and orders and never putting them down in writing. Sometimes months or even up to 2 years went by. As a result of her not following her judicial duties, serious matters of conflict remain unresolved. My appellate rights are thwarted, and new problems occur between the parties, which only resulted in continued legal fees, but not only continued legal fees, but produce fodder for new hearings, which cram a multitude of matters that are unjustly rushed and horribly confused. Well, during the above challenge, I've been fortunate to connect with many individuals and organizations that experience similar abuses. Pulse, a nonprofit advocacy effort favoring the right of citizens to engage in self-litigation without prejudice or abuse, took up my cause, assisted me in creating an online petition, and contacted Chief Justice Cynthia Wright about some of the judicial abuses that I had suffered. No response was ever received. Their efforts, along with my filing a complaint with the Judicial Qualification Committee, the branch of the state Supreme Court in charge of investigating the conduct of judges against both Judge Tucson and Judicial Alembic, has resulted in the judge and the judicial officer finally recusing themselves from my case. Alembic expressed this with his recusal directly to me during a hearing in March of 2011, after once again refusing my right to have a court reporter present in a threatening manner unbecoming of a judicial office, stated that he was stepping down from my case due to my online petition created by Pulse, my online activities associated with Lawless America, and he also threatened to sue me. It was at that moment I understood why Alembic refused the presence of a court reporter, because he didn't want this type of evidence of